Hey there, good evening. So today I wanted to do something a little different. I decided that I wanted to have ChatGPT teach me how to build a web scraper. So the reason I want to do this is because I think data is going to be by far the most important thing moving forward because we're going to have essentially infinite ways to process and compile and summarize data. So the data itself is going to be the most important. So I thought, oh, what an easier way to get it involved in data than just scraping data off the web. So I thought, hey, ChatGPT is pretty good at teaching programming. What if I had it teach me how to make a web scraper? So that's what I did. So my background in programming is almost none. I know some basic CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, but I don't even know if it would be enough to consider myself like JavaScript 101 in college. I think that's about it, like the 101 level, but otherwise not much knowledge at all. So I started at the very beginning. I used 3.5 for this whole thing because I knew it was gonna be a lot of questions. Wanted it to go fast. I didn't think 4.0 would be necessary for this, and it definitely wasn't. You can definitely use 3.5 for easy stuff. I do have 4, but no reason to use it for this. So I'm going to start from the beginning. I am not going to read through this whole thing. I'm already done. I was successful. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I do want to touch on how sort of the structure and how it taught me what to do. So first I asked what programming language. It told me I could use Python, JavaScript, or Ruby. I decided to go with Python because, again, I know how to use JavaScript to some degree. So I said, okay, let's start from fresh with something new that I don't know how to use. So we went with Python. So, and then it told me, I wanted to start from the beginning. It started telling me to install stuff. It's like, okay, what am I installing? It's apparently Beautiful Soup is a web scraper. It was telling me how to set up my, I don't know why it says Java, but how to set up my Python file. But we're already way too far. It jumped straight to basically into programming the actual file. So then I said, what's pip install? I was like, I don't know what that is. So it's apparently the Python installer. So now you're going to see, I'm going to scroll sort of slowly, but I spent probably half an hour trying to figure out what the most recent version of Python was, what Beautiful Soup was, what pip is, which is their installer. And then apparently had an older version of Python on my computer that I installed at some point. I think I had it when I was doing JavaScript testing. So then I started getting these crazy errors, invalid distributions, and you'll see it's trying to help me troubleshoot it. And then I'm getting access is denied errors. And I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing, but eventually it helped me figure out what the problem was. And I eventually just managed to uninstall, reinstall everything. Uninstalled Python, uninstalled pip, uninstalled Beautiful Soup, reinstalled everything. Because you see I asked how to reset my Python environment. And then eventually we got everything reinstalled. But yeah, that took a good half hour, which would have been much more frustrating without Python where I could literally just drop in the error code. And it tells me what it thinks is going on. So now you'll see I'm back on track. Everything's installed. Tells me to install Beautiful Soup. And then it also has this import requests, which I said I don't know what that is. It's a request library. So it definitely doesn't give you a fresh install. I probably could have worded it better to say what other libraries do I need for this project. Instead, it just says import requests, which at this point, now that I saw the import Beautiful Soup, I knew that this was a library, so I knew I needed to install it. So I asked what it is, and then it says, oh yeah, if you need it still, you can install it. So I asked, what is a Python library? And it gave me some of the bigger Python libraries. So I installed requests, I installed Beautiful Soup, and I was good to go. So now it gave me some very basic import strings, and then now we're finally into actually programming. So I already had VS Code because I was learning JavaScript, so I did at least have this portion already set up. And we were building this first web scraper Python bot. So my intended use case, I am looking into buying a dog daycare business. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to set up a web scraper to scrape data like the prices from competitors, so I can get keep an eye on the market, see what the going rate is for day and week passes, etc. I figured that would be sort of an interesting project to do. It's obviously not finished yet, but that was sort of my thought process. Was let's start with that. Just get prices. I assume that'll be an easy to find piece of data on any web page. It's gonna have a dollar sign in front of it. Surely it can't be that hard to find. So this was the first one. It's pretty interesting. First, Python told me just to load up, send a request to Google and just to get the title of the page, which was easy enough. It worked perfectly. You just copy and paste. It was this, but for Google instead of CNN. So what it was doing was sending the ping to the website, and then it was parsing it through the beautiful soup. And then the title was just the title string from the page, and then it would just print the title as as in the terminal. So easy enough. So then I started to tweak it, change the name of the page, and then finally you'll see that we're talking about Google, and then printing the URL. So it's giving me some other suggestions for ways to get started. I tried a different web page, skiptown.io. I was getting the 403 forbidden. It was telling me that I guess you can block the scraping ability, which I didn't know. So it was saying it was unable to fulfill the request, permissions. It gave some suggestions for how to maybe get around it as a user agent as opposed to like a robot.txt file. I didn't really look into that any further. Figured it doesn't matter right now. I don't need to figure out. So I asked, is there a way to get around it? It says that it's unethical. So I was like, okay, fair enough. Moving on. So I picked a different website. I asked if there was a way to just screen capture the page itself, and there apparently is. That was just sort of a digression. And then I said, okay, we got the title. How do I get all the information? And then it told me how to get the entire web page, which I printed, and obviously that was a gigantic mess of text. So then I said, okay, how do I get all the information and then output it to a file so that I'd have an HTML file and I can just click on it and open it to get the full page? It now gives me some additional functions, the open functions, which I guess is how you write to file. So it was creating an output.html file as the name of the file, which is all making sense because it's explaining it. It says, you got the open function to create a new file, and then it's got the HTML. It names it, tells you what it's named. And then it'll be created in the same directory as your Python script, which actually did not work for me, but that's a different. We'll get to that. So now you're going to see that I was having. I got an error. It just said I had some encoding error, and here is where it really starts to shine. So far you could have just followed like a YouTube guide, but I actually just copied this whole code. This was the error in my terminal. I just copied it, pasted it, and I was like, "What is it?" And now it explains it perfectly. It says it has to do with non-ASCII characters into a file, which I guess Windows has some issues with it. So it's just saying now you need to either convert them or not use them. And then we went through this discussion about installing or importing Unicode data to change the HTML. And I asked what it was. It's another library, allows you to convert or normalize, which basically gives you the closest equivalent, even if it's not exactly the same character. So it gives you closest equivalent, and then I asked how to install it. It's apparently by default. And then I got a new error. So it's saying you're still trying to write the wrong code, and I think it was a copy-paste error. And so I said, okay, I'm still getting the same error. Here's my code. And it's because I forgot to add this UTF-8 to the end of the file name. And then I ran it, no crash this time, but I couldn't find the output file. So now there's some discussions about where's the file, and it eventually told me to do the full file output. So full file output, and then it also said you could add a print function to tell you if it writes successfully. So I was still getting Unicode. I have these single backslashes in my file name, which apparently is an escape mechanism. So you learn something new every time you put something in, but it explains what it is. It says, I've used backslashes to separate the directory names. Those are escape sequences. So you have to either do a double backslash or a forward slash to represent the file path. So I fixed that, and then now I finally got my first scrape. So here was my first output. So now I've got this. This was the page I scraped. So this is the original. Oh, we'll close the inspection. This is the original page, and this was the scrape, which got almost all of it. And you see, it got the part that really matters, which is I'm trying to scrape this data for right now. So it got all the prices, which is what I was going for. So now I got it in this output file, but obviously way too much information. I don't need any of the rest of this. I just want this. So now we've got our first working version where we actually managed to scrape data and save it. And I said, all right, now I just want to get the price data. So it tells me how to find the elements on the pages. So we find the elements by going into the inspect function, and then you can just click through the classes. So you got your class, your wrapper, and you can just hover over it. And I just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. So here's the correct table for this. So then it says you just copy and paste. So you copy the selector. So if you see, as we scroll down here, it's telling me, where do I examine it? How do I examine it in Chrome? How do I use it in Chrome? And then it tells you how to highlight, copy the selector, like I just said. And then I said, please give me the full code. I'm a little confused. And now we are on to the second version. So I saved the first version because it was working correctly. I made the second version to actually pull the data. So I got the correct web page, and then I was trying to, and then when I copied the copy selector, you're going to see, I think I just hit copy again, I think, if I did. So let's just copy this. You're going to see copy selector, and there you go. So I think I went a little bit deeper to get the right thing, but it's the nth child 3 is the correct, that's the correct table that I'm trying to pull this data from. So then it explained to me I needed to run a loop on this data to get all the data, the text from each cell is what this little function is, if it's a function or a for if loop, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's just a for loop. I don't know. I don't have the correct terminology yet. I could ask ChatGPT and it would tell me. And then I exported it as a file to my computer, and then I was just troubleshooting by having it print the data. So this little print right here was all the data from the pricing table. And then this stripping is the prices. So then you'll see we have, at the end, a text document, because we have it set as prices.txt. Open it, and there you go. That is 30/20/285. That is this data right here, 30/20/285. So now you got all your data in a text file to do with whatever you want to do with it. So, like I said, I've never used Python before. This is my first experience using Python. I don't understand everything I did. I have a basic idea of what I did. You can look at this and sort of get an idea. You got your two libraries. You've got the web page you're pulling stuff from. You're pulling. This is using Beautiful Soup to get the HTML. And then you are selecting the table. So your pricing table is this table nth child 3, which is what I pulled from that data, which is what I pulled from the inspection on the web page. So I got the correct table. It's got 3 things, and then you're going to make a array using prices as your array, and you're just going to run through the whole array and then append it to I don't see where it skips a line, but you append the name and the price, because I guess it's 2 different cells. You got your cell 0 for name, cell 1 for price, that being cell 0, cell 1, and then it prints it to the file, and then once it prints the whole thing, you're going to write, oh, there it is. Okay, there's your line skip. So you write the total number of times for, oh, okay, that's interesting. So you're going to write into this file for the number of price I guess the number of times you're gonna write the price plus the n. Because price is okay. Yeah, so that's how that works. It's pretty interesting. And I guess this text.strip is what's pulling just the text out of the rest of the styling because you got all this background colors and stuff like that, which were totally unnecessary. So there you go, 15-minute explanation of what took me an hour and a half to figure out. But yeah, some of that was installing Python, and again, never used Python. That's why I thought this was sort of interesting. You can see how you can learn anything from Python or from a ChatGPT to teach you how to do any of this stuff. This was a pretty lengthy conversation, and I was limited just by my own understanding, but I really never really felt stuck because I could just copy and paste. And then I could ask about, if I didn't understand the line, I could just say, what does this line mean? And it would go through a nice explanation of what the line was. So you can copy in that whole function. Like, let's just say, for the fun of it, we can ask how this works. All right. So, not it. Wrong one. This one. How does this code work? Copy, paste. Yeah, code extracts the pricing data. So you're going to do prices to store it. That makes sense. It's a list, not an array. I guess that's not quite the same thing. And then it loops through each row. And then it extracts from each cell. And then it appends it. So yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and you can just copy and paste each portion of the code to get a better understanding of it. I know some people work better with foundational steps where it's like, here's a function. Here is, the 20 different ways that you can do a for loop. I don't learn quite as well that way. I can, but I get a little bored. I find I learn better with more of a hands-on example, just sort of diving into something that, while difficult, is not totally beyond the scope of my abilities. Like, this wasn't too bad. It's 15, how many lines of code is it? It's like 20 lines of code. It's not bad at all. And it's using some pre-built libraries. It's not like I'm building it from scratch. So, this is attainable as long as you pick a project that's not totally outside of your ability. I find this to be a very nice way to learn stuff that's not as boring as just learning from a book. So I hope this was helpful. I don't even know if helpful is the right word. I hope this was interesting, at least. I may do more videos like this if people enjoy it. If they don't, I won't. Or I might anyway. But I hope this was interesting, and thank you very much. Bye.